When we talk about cloud security, it's not really about building bigger walls anymore. It's all about who has the keys. So today, we're going to dig into why your biggest vulnerability might already be inside your system and how managing identity has become the new firewall. For the longest time, security was all about this castle and moat idea. You build a really strong, fortified perimeter, and everything inside is trusted and safe. Once you were inside the walls, you were golden. But as we've all moved to the cloud, those clear boundaries have just dissolved. And yeah, those old rules, they just don't work anymore. And if you need proof that the old model is failing, just look at this number. In 2024, a full 80% of companies reported having a cloud security incident. Seriously, that's not just some random number. It's a huge wake-up call. The game has totally changed, and our strategy has to change right along with it.
Let's just break down the difference here. Think about it. The old way was totally static, a fixed perimeter protecting servers sitting in a rack somewhere. But now, it's this dynamic, constantly shifting landscape of services, APIs, and users logging in from everywhere. We've shifted from securing networks to securing identities, where a simple digital credential has become the key to the entire kingdom. So, that begs the question, right? If the old defenses are basically useless, where's the real front line now? Well, it's not a place, it's a person. It's every single user, every application, and every service that connects to your environment. The battle has officially moved to identity. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll define what this new security perimeter really is. Then, we'll dive deep into policies, the actual tools that control access. After that, we'll cover some key best practices for permissions. And finally, we'll look at some advanced guardrails called boundaries that help you manage all this as you grow. Okay, let's get into it. If identity really is the new perimeter, then you can think of policies as the rules of engagement. They are, without a doubt, the absolute foundation of how we control access in the cloud. So what exactly is an IAM policy? Well, you can think of it like your digital rulebook. It's basically a document that gets attached to an identity, whether that's a person or an application, and it spells out exactly what they can and cannot do. Bottom line, it's the final word on who gets to do what. Now, it's important to know that not all policies are the same. They really come in three main flavors. First up, you have AWS managed policies. These are super convenient, pre-built templates for common jobs. Then you've got customer managed policies, which are the ones you build yourself for your own specific, reusable needs. And finally, there are inline policies, which are for very specific, one-off situations tied to just a single identity. Knowing which one to use when is absolutely key. Okay, so having the right tools is one thing, but that's really only half the battle. Now we've got to talk about the strategy behind using them effectively. And it all boils down to one single core principle. And here it is, the golden rule, the principle of least privilege. Honestly, it's such a simple concept, but it has a massive impact on your security. All it means is, give users and systems only the access they absolutely need to do their jobs, and nothing more. That one idea, it dramatically shrinks your potential attack surface. So how do we actually put this into practice? Well, first off, you always want to prefer temporary credentials that expire over permanent ones. A stolen temporary key just doesn't last long. Next, whenever you can, use the built-in service integrations. Now, for those rare times you have to use long-term keys, you've got to rotate them regularly. And finally, you can use policy conditions to add extra layers of security, like restricting access to certain times of day or specific IP addresses. Now, rotating a key might sound like a huge, complicated pain, but there's a really methodical, zero downtime way to do it. See, you create the new key first, then you go update all your apps to use it. After you've confirmed everything is working, you mark the old key as inactive. And notice you don't delete it just yet. You wait a bit and only then do you delete the old key for good. It's all about being safe. So just take a second and think about your own environment. Right now, do you actually know who has access to what? It's really time to, put on your detective hat and start asking some tough questions. Are all these permissions still necessary? Are they all following that principle of least privilege we just talked about? Okay, we've nailed down the basics, but what happens when you start to scale up? How do you keep control when you have tons of different teams all needing to create their own access rules? Well, that's where some more advanced guardrails come into play. I mean, this is the classic dilemma, right? You want to let your dev teams move fast, be innovative. But you absolutely cannot risk them accidentally creating a role with permissions so broad it exposes all your sensitive data. It's this constant balancing act between speed and safety. And the solution here is a pretty cool feature called a permissions boundary. So this is a special kind of policy, but it doesn't actually grant any permissions. Instead, what it does is set a hard ceiling, a maximum limit on what a role is allowed to do. It's a line that simply cannot be crossed, no matter what other policies are attached.
Yeah, think of the permissions boundary like a security guard for your permissions. A developer could write a policy that says, hey, give me full admin access. But if the permissions boundary says, nope, you can only access these specific things, that guard steps in and stops them. The boundary always wins.
So here's a breakdown of how it actually works. Your central security team sets the boundary. Then developers can go ahead and create roles for their applications, but they have to attach that boundary. So the final, effective permissions are the intersection of the two. It's only what's allowed by both the developer's policy and the central boundary. It's a great way to delegate without giving up control.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground, from basic policies all the way to permissions boundaries. But if there's one thing you absolutely need to take away from all this, what is it? It's this. The tools are important for sure, but they're pretty much useless without the right mindset. Real modern cloud security is about a fundamental shift in how you think. It's about moving away from being reactive and instead being proactive with an identity-first approach, where every single access decision is carefully considered and least privilege is always the default.
So I'll leave you with this one question to really think about. Is your current strategy just about building bigger walls, or is it truly focused on securing identities? Because in the modern cloud, that's the only battle that really matters.